Hello, Nick Leifker here, and welcome to week 7 of GMGT 590, Operations Management. This week we're going to talk about the supply chain. And the supply chain is simply another variation on a very familiar theme. If you recall, at the beginning of this course we talked about the process, taking stuff and converting it into more valuable stuff. And much of what we've talked about in this course has been some variation on that theme. First week, we looked at the bottleneck and looked at throughput rate and how do we determine how much our process can get done. Second week, we looked at how to allocate or possibly reallocate resources such that our capacity or throughput rate is increased and possibly our utilization is higher. Third week, we looked at the process under variation, under uncertainty, and how that uncertainty reduces what our process is capable of doing. Fourth week, we looked at quality. How do we make sure that what we have for a process is done well? Fifth week, we looked at inventory, the fuel behind our process. How do we make sure that we have just the right amount to keep the process running without weighing our company down? Sixth week, we looked at some variations on that theme. We looked at lean processing, trying to come up with a process that has as little inventory as possible while still running healthily. We also looked at things like MRP and ERP systems and how do we schedule work in cases where our demand for a part is dependent on something else. And we also looked at risk pooling. We looked at this idea that the variation we have, we can manage it. We can mitigate its effects. Well, week 7, we go back to the original theme. We go back to the process. But we look at the process from a much larger perspective. What a supply chain is, you start with raw material. You start with dirt. And from this dirt, you eventually come up with a finished good. Now, between dirt and a finished good, there are all sorts of steps, and there are all sorts of companies. So the question is, how do these companies work together to eventually take dirt and produce a finished good that a customer is going to want? Now, we're going to look at this from several perspectives. We're going to first look at some useful ideas within supply chain. We're going to look at risk within the supply chain. We're going to look at how to manage the possibility of catastrophe within supply chain. We're going to look at some of the oddities that occur within supply chain. This concept that what is good for our business, what is good for one business, and what is good for the entire supply chain is not necessarily the same thing. And finally, we're going to finish this with just a little introduction to an idea called game theory, where how do we arrange things such that the goals of all of the players, all of the actors within the supply chain are aligned. Now, you'll note that there is no homework specifically assigned for week 7. You'll note that there is no video quiz specifically assigned for the material in week 7. You'll note that there is no group assignment specifically for week 7. You have a project due. You have an exam at the end of the week. Start preparing for those. So, you will be responsible for the material in a conceptual way for week 7. So, watch the videos, take notes. That said, get stuff done, prepare for the exam, be well, take care, and good luck.